right, we're back to do session 2 with global warming and the issue of our day. And our whole theme here is, if you remember, wrong info. If you get the wrong information, you are going to come to the wrong conclusion on this subject. And so it's very important that we understand a few critical issues when we're talking about global warming. Now, we started on talking on projected ice melt, and we're using the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change fourth assessment. And that fourth assessment details out the projected ice melt on the continent of Greenland. And so we talked about that the first 20% is projected to melt in 270 years. That's if you believe their projections for the temperature. And we'll get into that in another session where we talk about their projections, their models, and show you where they're wrong. But we'll even go out to the projection on 80% of the ice melt, which would give you somewhere around, assuming that ice melt is across the whole globe, that would give you that 20-foot sea level rise that we have some other global warming alarmists talking about. Well, that is in 1,760 years based on 4 times the carbon dioxide level and based on their temperature projections, which again we'll talk about are wrong. So the key is 1,760 years. Do you think that's enough time to plan if in fact this is what's going to happen? Well, let's give you a couple visuals. Now, I'm kind of an aviation nut. And it turns out on Greenland, back after World War II, our guys flew in. You couldn't fly all the way across the ocean, so you had to land in Greenland to refuel. Well, in 1942, they landed in Greenland to refuel. And what happened was they had an ice storm. And after about a week of ice storm, they decided to ship the guys home on ships, get them home, so they left the airplanes there. Well, the ice kept building and building and building until they couldn't get the airplanes off of there. And in fact, when they went back in 1992 to look for these aircraft, they called this P-38 Glacier Girl, and it was under 268 feet of ice. So between 1942 and when it was recovered in 1992, 50 years, all the other aircraft had a minimum of 300 feet of ice over it, and Glacier Girl had 268. And in fact, today, the ice is not melting of any significant amount in that area. We'll move on to Antarctica. You hear a lot about Antarctica and the ice melting. And there's Old Bird Station in Antarctica. It was established in 1957 by the Army. And here's what you can see left. And you guys can find all this information on the internet, but what we have is 115-foot tall electric transmission lines, of which about the top 40 feet, yeah, that's the top 40 feet, are sticking out from the ice. So since 1957 and today, in the midst of all this work and the industrialized nation, all this CO2 going into the atmosphere, the ice is building on Antarctica. And in fact, on Greenland and Antarctica, the ice is building at such rapid rates, and all this is published and peer-reviewed scientific information. You can find it on the internet. We'll give you a link so you can get a hold of us. We'll get you the information. But the lowest percentage of ice build on Antarctica is showing somewhere around 72 to 79% of ice is building on Antarctica. The highest research project is saying about 90% of Antarctica is actually building ice. And out of 3 research projects in the last 5 to 7 years, they're all coming to the same conclusion, that if Antarctica keeps building ice at the rate it's building today, it will actually gather enough moisture up from the oceans that it has the potential to lower sea levels. Yep, you heard it right. These research projects, in their conclusions, say if Antarctica keeps building ice at the current rate, it has the potential to lower sea levels, and that's not something you hear in the news. Thanks.